The first time I saw Thomas, he was fixing a flat tire in the rain. I was walking home from the grocery store, plastic bags cutting into my palms, and I heard the hiss of the jack before I saw him. He was kneeling in a puddle, water streaming down the back of his neck, working a lug wrench with the patient concentration of a man who had nowhere else to be. I stopped. Not because I wanted to help. I was 31 years old and I had learned not to stop for men in the rain, but because his hands were shaking. Not from cold, from something else. Grief, maybe, or exhaustion, or the simple crushing weight of a life that wasn't going the way he'd planned. Need help? I asked. He looked up. His eyes were blue, the washed-out blue of old denim, and they held no calculation. No appraisal. Just surprise, as if he'd forgotten other people existed. No, he said. Then softer. Thank you. I'm almost done. I stood there anyway, bags cutting deeper, rain soaking through my coat, and I watched him finish. He tightened the last lug nut, lowered the jack, and stood up. He was tall, thin in a way that spoke of missed meals rather than vanity, and his clothes, khakis, a button-down shirt with a frayed collar, hung on him like they belonged to someone else. Flat tire, he said, as if I hadn't seen. Third one this month. I think there's something wrong with the alignment. Maybe you need a new car? I said. It was a joke, the kind of thing you say to strangers to fill silence. He smiled. It was a small smile, hesitant, like a child testing a frozen pond. Maybe I do. But this one gets me where I need to go. Most of the time. He loaded the flat into the bed of the truck, an old Ford, rust-eating at the wheel wells, the kind of truck that should have been retired years ago, and he turned to me. Can I give you a ride? You're soaked. I should have said no. Every article I'd ever read, every friend who'd been hurt, every voice in my head that had grown loud and sharp after Daniel, they all said no. But his eyes were so tired, so empty of anything except the simple, human decency of offering a stranger a ride in the rain. Just to the corner, I said. I live close. He nodded, opened the passenger door and wiped the seat with his sleeve before I got in. The cab smelled like old coffee and something sweeter. Vanilla, maybe, or the ghost of an air freshener that had given up years ago. There was a child's car seat in the back, pink and faded, and a stuffed rabbit wedged between the cushions. Your daughter? I asked. Yes. He started the engine. It coughed, caught, settled into a rattle that vibrated through the floorboards. Lily. She's 7. She lives with me, full time. And her mother? The pause was brief, but I caught it. She passed. 2 years ago. Cancer. I'm sorry, I said. And I was. I knew what it meant to lose someone slowly, to watch them disappear cell by cell, to hold their hand and feel the warmth leak out hour by hour. My mother. 4 years ago. The reason I'd moved to this town, this job, this life of grocery bags and rain walks and loneliness so complete, it felt like a second skin. Thank you, Thomas said. He didn't elaborate. He didn't perform his grief for me, the way some men did. The way Daniel had, turning every conversation into a monologue about his pain, his needs, his absolute right to take whatever he wanted because the world owed him for his suffering. Thomas just drove. The wipers scraped across the windshield, and the rain drummed on the roof, and we didn't speak again until he pulled up to my building. This is me, I said. Yes. He put the truck in park. I'm Thomas, by the way. Thomas Hale. Elena, I said. Elena Marsh. He nodded, as if filing the name away in some careful mental cabinet. It was nice to meet you, Elena, even in the rain. I got out. I stood on the sidewalk, bags dripping, and I watched him drive away. The truck's taillights disappeared around the corner, red blinking out into gray, and I thought, that was the kindest interaction I've had with a man in 3 years. I didn't know it would be the last kind one. We met again 2 weeks later. At the library, The small brick building on Main Street that smelled like dust and old paper and the particular melancholy of books nobody checked out anymore. I was in the mystery section, running my finger along spines, when I heard a small voice behind me. "You're the lady from the rain." I turned. Lily Hale was a miniature version of her father. Same washed-out blue eyes, same thin frame, same hesitant smile. She held a stack of picture books against her chest, and she was looking at me with the frank curiosity of a child who hasn't yet learned to hide her thoughts. "I am," I said. "You're Lily, right?" "Yes." She didn't offer her hand. She just stood there, studying me, and then she said, "My dad talks about you. He says you were nice." "Does he?" I felt something warm in my chest, something I hadn't felt in a long time. "Well, your dad was nice too. He gave me a ride." "He gives everyone rides," Lily said. Then, as if she'd revealed too much, she hugged her books tighter and looked down at her shoes. "I have to go find him. We're getting ice cream. Goodbye." She walked away, small and serious, and I watched her go. Thomas appeared at the end of the aisle, same frayed collar, same tired eyes, and he smiled when he saw me. That small, testing smile. "She found you," he said. "She did. She's she's not usually friendly with strangers. I'm sorry if she bothered you." "She didn't bother me." I paused. Then, because I was lonely and he was kind and the rain had been a long time ago, I said, "Would you like to get coffee? There's a place across the street. I mean, if you haven't had ice cream yet. Or even if you have. Coffee is different." He blinked. For a moment, I thought I'd made a mistake. I'd been too forward, too eager, too much like the desperate woman I was trying not to be. But then his smile widened, just a fraction, and he nodded. "Coffee would be nice," he said. "Lily, do you mind?" Lily looked at me, looked at her father. Then she shrugged, a gesture too old for her small shoulders. "Can I have a muffin?" "One muffin," Thomas said. "And you have to share your books with me later." "Fine." We walked across the street together, Thomas and Lily and me, a strange little family that wasn't a family yet. And I felt something shift inside me. A loosening. A possibility. The first crack in the wall I'd built after Daniel, after the screaming and the controlling and the night he'd put his hand around my throat and told me I was nothing without him. Thomas held the door for me. He pulled out my chair. He asked what I wanted and he listened. Actually listened, his eyes on my face instead of his phone. And when Lily spilled her hot chocolate and started to cry, not because of the mess, but because she was tired and overwhelmed and 7 years old, he didn't yell. He just knelt beside her, wiped her face with a napkin, and said, "It's okay, Bug. Accidents happen. We'll clean it up." I watched them, father and daughter, and I thought, this is what safe looks like. I didn't know I was wrong. We dated for 6 months. Slow, careful, the pace of a man who wasn't in a hurry and a woman who was afraid to rush. Thomas worked in an office. "Logistics," he said, vague and unbothered by the vagueness. He drove the same old truck, lived in the same small house on the edge of town, wore the same frayed shirts. He never took me to expensive restaurants, never bought me jewelry, never made promises he couldn't keep. Instead, he remembered my coffee order. He texted me good morning every morning without fail. He introduced me to Lily gradually, first as my friend Elena, then Elena, who I like very much, then, finally, one night when she was supposed to be asleep but wasn't, she called me Elena, maybe Mom. And Thomas turned red and I laughed until I cried. "She's been thinking about that for weeks," he admitted later, when Lily was finally asleep and we were sitting on his porch, watching fireflies flicker in the dark. "I told her not to say anything. I didn't want to scare you." "She didn't scare me," I said. And it was true. What scared me was how much I wanted it. The porch, the fireflies, the small house with its creaking stairs and the smell of vanilla air freshener. The life that was modest and real and completely, utterly Mine. Elena. Thomas turned to me. His face was serious, the way it got when he was about to say something important. I know I'm not what you expected. I'm not rich. I'm not exciting. I have a daughter and an old truck and a job that barely covers the bills. But I love you. I've loved you since the rain. And if you want this, if you want us, I'll spend every day making sure you never regret it. I looked at him. The tired eyes, the thin shoulders, the frayed collar. The man who fixed flat tires in the rain and wiped hot chocolate off his daughter's face and never, ever asked for more than I could give. I want this, I said. I want you. He kissed me. It was gentle, careful, the kiss of a man who had learned to be gentle because the world had been hard. And I kissed him back, and I believed him, and I let myself fall. We got married at the courthouse. Small, simple. Thomas in a suit that was slightly too big. Me in a white dress I'd found on sale. Lily as our witness in a purple dress she'd picked herself. There were no guests. My mother was gone. My father had never been in the picture, and the friends I'd had before Daniel had drifted away, tired of my excuses, my silences, my refusal to leave. Thomas had no one either. No parents, no siblings, no family except Lily. It's always been just us, he'd said, and I'd nodded, understanding, because it had always been just me too. The judge pronounced us husband and wife. Thomas kissed me, Lily threw rice she'd saved from a school project, and we drove home in the old truck. The three of us squeezed into the cab, Lily between us, chattering about how she was going to call me Mom now, officially. And could we get a dog? A dog? Thomas laughed. We can barely feed ourselves, Bug. We can get a small dog, a hungry dog, a dog that doesn't eat much. We'll see, Thomas said. We'll see. I looked out the window, the town rolling by in its green, sleepy way, and I felt something settle inside me. Peace. The kind of peace I'd stopped believing existed. I was married. I had a family. I was safe. The truck rattled over a pothole and Thomas reached across Lily to squeeze my hand. Happy? He asked. Happy, I said. I meant it. The first 2 days of marriage were ordinary. Blissfully, beautifully ordinary. Thomas went to work. The office, he called it. Same as always. And I stayed home with Lily, helping her with homework, making lunches, learning the rhythms of a household that wasn't mine, but was becoming mine. The small house had 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with appliances that were older than I was. It was humble. It was perfect. On the 3rd day, Thomas came home early. I heard the truck in the driveway. That familiar rattle, that cough of an engine that should have retired years ago. And then I heard something else. A smooth, expensive purr. A sound like money. I went to the window. Thomas was standing in the driveway beside a black SUV. New, gleaming, the kind of vehicle that cost more than my annual salary. He was holding keys. He was smiling. Elena, he called. Come out here. I went. Lily followed, curious, her homework forgotten on the kitchen table. We stood in the driveway, the 3 of us, and Thomas held out the keys. They were heavy, cold, unmistakably real. What's this? I asked. Your wedding gift, Thomas said. I know it's late. 3 days late, actually. But I wanted to make sure it was the right one. The right one? Thomas, I don't understand. We can't afford... This is a new car. This is... I looked at the SUV, at the leather seats I could see through the window, at the navigation system and the sunroof, and the badge on the hood that I recognized from commercials. This is $50,000. Minimum. Take the keys, Thomas said. His voice was soft, patient, the same voice he'd used when Lily spilled her hot chocolate. Go to the dealership. Pick whatever you want. Any color. Any model. They know you're coming. Thomas. I stepped back. The keys hung in the air between us and I didn't take them. What are you talking about? What dealership? We don't have money for this. You work in logistics. You drive a truck that's falling apart. We live in a house with a stove from 1985. How can you... Elena. He stepped closer. He took my hand, gently, always gently, and pressed the keys into my palm. His fingers were warm, steady, nothing like the shaking hands I'd seen in the rain. Trust me. Go to the dealership. Ask for Marcus. Tell him your name. And then... He paused, his blue eyes holding mine. Buy whatever you want. He let go. He turned and walked back to the house, Lily trailing behind him, chattering about whether we could get a dog that matched the car. I stood in the driveway, keys cutting into my palm, and I looked at the SUV. At the truck, rusted and faithful, parked beside it. At the house, small and humble, with its creaking stairs and vanilla air freshener. I didn't understand. But I was married now. I was supposed to trust him. I got in the SUV. I started the engine. It purred to life, smooth and powerful and terrifying, and I drove. The dealership was on the highway, 20 minutes out of town. I'd driven past it 100 times. A sprawling complex of glass and chrome, luxury cars lined up like soldiers, the kind of place where men in suits sold vehicles that cost more than houses. I'd never been inside. I'd never had a reason. I pulled up to the entrance. A valet appeared, young and polished, and he opened my door before I could reach for the handle. "Mrs. Hale?" he asked. I blinked. "How did you—" Mr. Hale called ahead. "Marcus is waiting for you inside. Please, follow me." I followed him. The showroom was cathedral-like, all marble and glass and soft lighting that made the cars glow like art. Men in tailored suits moved between displays, speaking in low voices, and women in dresses that cost more than my wedding dress sipped coffee from tiny cups and discussed leather grades. "Mrs. Hale," a man approached, tall, silver-haired, with the smooth confidence of someone who had sold expensive things to nervous people for decades. "I'm Marcus. It's an honor to meet you. Mr. Hale has told me so much about you." "He has?" I shook his hand. It was cool, dry, practiced. "I'm sorry, I don't understand. My husband, he said to come here. He said to pick whatever I want. But I don't know why. We can't afford... I mean, Thomas works in logistics. He drives an old truck. We live in... Mrs. Hale." Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Please, let's step into my office. There's something I need to show you." He led me through the showroom, past the gleaming cars and the murmuring customers, to a door at the back. His office was small, cluttered with papers and photographs. Marcus with a golf trophy, Marcus with a dog, Marcus with a woman who might have been his wife. He closed the door. He locked it. "Please, sit," he said. I sat. The chair was leather, expensive, and it swallowed me like a mouth. "Mrs. Hale, Elena, may I call you Elena?" "Yes. Elena." He sat across from me. He folded his hands on the desk. And then he said something that made the room tilt. "Your husband didn't tell you, did he?" "Tell me what?" Marcus reached into his desk drawer. He pulled out a file. Thick, bound, the kind of file that held years of secrets. He opened it. He turned it toward me. Photographs. Dozens of them. Thomas with men in suits. Thomas at ribbon cuttings. Thomas shaking hands with politicians, with celebrities, with people whose faces I recognized from magazines. Thomas standing in front of buildings. This dealership, and others. Dozens of others, stretching across 3 states. "Thomas Hale," Marcus said, "owns this dealership. He owns the one in Millbrook. He owns the one in Riverside, the one in Oakdale, the one in..." He flipped a page. 17 locations total, plus the financing company, plus the insurance subsidiary, plus the real estate holding company that owns the land under every single one of them. I stared at the photographs. Thomas smiling, confident, a man I'd never seen. Thomas in a tuxedo. Thomas on a yacht. Thomas with his arm around a woman who wasn't me. Blonde, beautiful, laughing. "That's..." My voice cracked. That's his first wife? Lily's mother? No. Marcus's voice was careful, measured. That's Catherine Voss. She was his business partner. For 10 years. They were engaged. Briefly. Before he met Lily's mother. She's still involved in the company. Very involved. I felt sick. The leather chair was too hot. The office too small. The air too thick. I don't understand. He told me. He said he worked in logistics. He said he barely made enough to cover the bills. He said what he needed to say. Marcus closed the file. He leaned forward and his voice dropped to a whisper. Elena, I shouldn't be telling you this. Mr. Hale, Thomas, he's a powerful man. A dangerous man, if crossed. But I've known him for 15 years and I've seen what he does to people who get too close, who ask too many questions, who find out what he doesn't want them to know. Dangerous? The word felt foreign in my mouth. Thomas? He's gentle. He's kind. He fixes flat tires in the rain. He's worth $400 million, Marcus said. And he got there by being exactly what people need him to be. Poor Thomas, the widower, the single father, the man who just needs someone to love him. He plays that role better than anyone I've ever seen. And when he's done, when he's gotten what he wants, he disappears. The money stays, the companies stay, the women don't. I stood up. My legs were shaking, but I stood. You're lying. This is some kind of joke. Some test. He told you to say this, didn't he? To see if I'd... Elena. Marcus stood too. He reached into the file again, pulled out a newspaper clipping. He handed it to me. His first wife. Lily's mother. Her name was Sarah. She died of cancer, right? That's what he told you? I looked at the clipping. It was from a newspaper I'd never heard of, dated 2 years ago. The headline read, Local woman's death ruled suicide. Family questions findings. Beneath it, a photograph. Sarah Hale. Blonde, thin, the same washed-out blue eyes as her daughter. She looked familiar. She looked like me. She didn't have cancer, Marcus said. She found out about the money, about Catherine, about the other women. There were 3 before you, Elena. 3 who thought they were marrying a poor, kind widower. Sarah was the only one who made it to the wedding. The others disappeared before that, moved away, changed their names, refused to talk about what happened. But Sarah, she was stubborn. She hired a private investigator. She found the accounts, the companies, the lies. And then she was found in her bathtub, wrists slit. A note that didn't sound like her at all. Suicide, I whispered. That's what the police said. That's what Thomas said. But I knew Sarah. She loved Lily more than anything. She would never... Marcus stopped. He looked at the door, suddenly nervous, as if he'd heard something. You need to go, Elena. You need to leave. Now. Before he knows you were here. Before... The door burst open. Thomas stood in the doorway. Not the Thomas I knew. Not the frayed collar, the tired eyes, the gentle smile. This Thomas wore a suit that fit perfectly, charcoal gray, tailored to his thin frame. His hair was styled, his shoes were polished, and his eyes, those washed-out blue eyes, were cold, empty. The eyes of a man who had never fixed a flat tire in the rain. Marcus, he said. His voice was soft, the same soft voice he'd used when Lily spilled her hot chocolate. I believe I asked you to show my wife a car, not a file. Thomas, Marcus's voice cracked. I was just... She had questions, and I thought... You thought... Thomas stepped into the room. He didn't look at me. He looked at Marcus, and something passed between them. A history, a warning, a threat so old it had become routine. Marcus, you've been with me for 15 years. You've been loyal. You've been useful. Don't ruin it now. He turned to me. His smile returned, that small, testing smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. Elena, you weren't supposed to find out like this. I wanted to tell you myself. Tonight. Maybe over wine. I wanted it to be romantic. Romantic? My voice was a stranger's, high and thin and terrified. You lied to me. You lied about everything. Your job. Your money. Your wife. She didn't have cancer, Thomas. She killed herself. Or you. She killed herself, Thomas said. His voice was flat, final, the voice of a man who had rehearsed this conversation. She was unstable, paranoid. She found out about the money and she couldn't handle it. She thought I was hiding something from her. Which I was, but not in the way she thought. She thought there was another woman. There wasn't. There was only ever the business, the companies, the life I'd built before her, that I couldn't share because... He paused, his eyes flickering. Because people change when they know you have money, Elena. They stop seeing you. They see the money. They want things. They take things. I couldn't risk that with you. So you lied. So I protected us. He stepped closer. I stepped back, bumped into the desk, felt Marcus's file digging into my hip. I wanted to know you loved me for me, the real me, the man in the rain, not the man in the suit. And you did, Elena. You loved me. I saw it. I felt it. That's why I married you. That's why I gave you the keys today, because I was ready. I was ready to show you everything. He held out his hand. Palm up, steady, the hand of a man who had never trembled. Come home with me. Let me explain. Let me show you the life I can give you. The life we can have together. You and me and Lily. A real family. Finally. I looked at his hand. I looked at Marcus, who was staring at the floor, his face pale, his hands shaking worse than Thomas's ever had in the rain. I looked at the file, at Sarah's photograph, at the newspaper clipping with its questions that would never be answered. And I thought of Lily, 7 years old, serious, hugging her books, asking if we could get a dog. Lily, who called me Elena, maybe Mom. Lily, whose mother had died, or been killed, because she learned the truth. I need to think, I said. My voice was steady, surprisingly steady, the voice of a woman who had survived Daniel and survived worse, and would survive this too. I need time. Of course. Thomas's smile widened, just a fraction. He thought he'd won. He always thought he'd won. Take the SUV, drive around, clear your head. I'll be at home with Lily. We'll have dinner. We'll talk. Everything will be fine, Elena. I promise. He turned and walked out. The door clicked shut behind him. Marcus let out a breath, long and shaky, and he looked at me with eyes that were almost pitying. Don't go back, he whispered. Take the car and drive, don't stop. Change your name, disappear. It's the only way. I can't, I said. Lily. Lily is his, Marcus said. She always has been. She always will be. And if you try to take her, if you try to fight him, he shook his head. You don't know what he's capable of, what he's already done. The women before Sarah, Elena, they didn't just move away. They didn't just change their names. He stopped. He looked at the door again, and when he spoke, his voice was barely audible. They're in the foundation, he said. The new dealership in Riverside. They poured the concrete 3 years ago. 2 women. No families, no one to ask questions. And Sarah, she was going to talk. She was going to the police. That's why she had to... He didn't finish. He didn't need to. I stood in Marcus's office, the leather chair behind me, the file in my hands, and I felt something break inside me. Not my heart. That had broken years ago, with Daniel, with my mother, with every loss that had taught me to build walls. This was something deeper, something harder. I felt the diamond forming. Thank you, Marcus, I said. My voice was calm, clear, the voice of a woman who had made a decision. You've been very helpful. I walked out of the office. I walked through the showroom, past the gleaming cars and the murmuring customers, past the valet who opened my door with a smile. I got in the SUV. I started the engine, and I drove. Not away. Not yet. I drove to the courthouse, to the small brick building where 3 days ago I'd stood in a white dress and believed I was safe. I parked. I went inside. I asked for the marriage license records, and I found what I was looking for. Thomas Hale, married to Sarah Jennings, 2015. Married to me, 2026. But between us, 3 other marriage licenses, 3 other women, all annulled within 6 months. All from towns within 100 miles. All with no forwarding addresses, no social media, no trace. I went to the police station next. Small town, 2 officers, a desk sergeant who looked at me with the tired eyes of a man who had seen too much and done too little. I told him everything. The money, the lies, Sarah, the other women, what Marcus had said about the foundation. He listened. He took notes. He asked me to wait, and he went into the back room, and I heard him on the phone. His voice was low, deferential, the voice of a man speaking to someone powerful. He came back 10 minutes later. His face was different now. Closed, careful, the face of a man who had been given instructions. "Mrs. Hale," he said, "I'm sorry, but without evidence, physical evidence, we can't open an investigation. Marcus's statements are hearsay. The marriage licenses don't prove anything. And your husband, Mr. Hale, he's a respected member of this community, a donor, a philanthropist. If you make accusations without proof, he could sue you for defamation. He could—" "I understand," I said. I stood up. My hands were steady. My heart was steady. "Thank you for your time, officer." I walked out. I got in the SUV. I drove home. The house was dark when I pulled up. The truck was gone. The old Ford. The faithful rusted truck. The prop in Thomas's performance. In its place, a black sedan. Expensive. Anonymous. Catherine Voss's car, maybe. Or just another piece of the puzzle. I went inside. The house smelled different. Not vanilla. Not old coffee. But something sharper. Something expensive. Cologne, maybe. Or fear. Thomas was in the living room. He wasn't alone. A woman sat beside him. Blonde, beautiful. The woman from the photograph. Catherine Voss. She looked at me with eyes that were neither friendly nor hostile. Just assessing. The eyes of a woman who had made her peace with the devil long ago. "Elena," Thomas said. He stood up. He was still in the suit. Still perfect. Still the stranger I'd married. I was worried. "You were gone so long." "I went for a drive," I said. I needed to think. "And?" I looked at Catherine. Looked at Thomas. Looked at the life they had built together. The money, the power, the women who disappeared and the concrete that covered their secrets. "I think," I said slowly, "that I want a divorce." The silence was absolute. Even the clock stopped ticking, or maybe I just stopped hearing it. Thomas's smile didn't falter. "A divorce?" "Elena, we just got married. 3 days ago. You can't be serious." "I'm serious." "And Lily? You'd leave Lily? After everything she means to you? After she called you mom?" I felt the knife twist. I felt it, and I let it twist, because pain was information and information was power. "Lily deserves a mother who isn't lying to her," I said, "and I deserve a husband who isn't lying to me. About everything. About his money, his business, his first wife, the other women." "Other women?" Thomas's voice was soft, dangerous, the voice of a man who had been caught and was deciding how to respond. "What other women, Elena?" I reached into my purse. I pulled out the copies I'd made at the courthouse. I threw them on the coffee table. 3 marriage licenses, 3 names, 3 women who had disappeared. Thomas looked at them. Catherine looked at them. Neither of them spoke. "I went to the police," I said. "They wouldn't help. You're too powerful, too connected, too generous with your donations. But I'm not powerless, Thomas. I have these. I have Marcus's testimony, and I have something you didn't count on. Which is? I survived a man like you before, I said. His name was Daniel. He controlled me, he hurt me, he almost killed me. And I got out. I built a life. I built walls. And then I met you, and I thought I'd found something different. Someone safe. But you're not safe, Thomas. You're just richer. And that means you have more to lose. I stepped closer. I looked into his eyes, those washed-out blue eyes that had seemed so tired, so kind, so empty of calculation. And I saw what had been there all along, not emptiness, hunger. The hunger of a vulture, circling, waiting, patient beyond measure. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to give me a divorce, a clean one. No fight, no lawyers, no threats. You're going to give me enough money to start over. Not your millions, just enough. And you're going to let me see Lily. Not because I have proof of what you did. I don't. Not yet. But because if you don't, I'll spend every day of my life looking for it. I'll talk to every reporter, every blogger, every true crime podcaster who wants a story about the billionaire who preys on lonely women. I'll make your name synonymous with murder. And you won't be able to stop me because you taught me something important, Thomas. I leaned in. My voice dropped to a whisper. The same whisper Marcus had used. The whisper of a secret that could destroy. You taught me that the best disguise is the one nobody questions. The poor man, the widower, the gentle father. Nobody looks at you twice. Nobody suspects. And now, I smiled. A small, testing smile, his own smile reflected back at him. Neither do I. I'm just a heartbroken bride, running away from a marriage that moved too fast. A victim, if you will. And victims get sympathy. Victims get attention. Victims get people asking questions you don't want answered. Thomas stared at me. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he laughed. It was a genuine laugh, surprised and almost admiring, the laugh of a man who had finally met his match. Well, he said. Well, 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 Elena Marsh. Or should I say, Elena Hale? You are full of surprises. I learned from the best. Apparently. He sat back down. He looked at Catherine, who hadn't moved, whose face was still that mask of assessment. What do you think, Cat? Should we let her go? Catherine's eyes met mine. Something passed between us. Not friendship, not solidarity, but recognition. The recognition of two women who had survived by being what men needed them to be. She's smart, Catherine said. Her voice was smooth, cultured, the voice of a woman who had grown up with money and learned to use it. Smarter than the others. If you fight her, she'll fight back. And she's right. She has nothing to lose. You have everything. Thomas nodded slowly. He steepled his fingers, the gesture of a man who had made billion-dollar decisions in rooms I would never see. Fine, he said. A divorce. Clean. Money. Enough. Not too much. And Lily. He paused. His eyes flickered, something almost like pain crossing his perfect face. Lily loves you. She'll miss you. Then let her visit, I said. Supervised, if you want. But let her know I didn't abandon her. That this wasn't her fault. And if I agree to all this, you'll disappear? You'll never speak of this again? I'll disappear, I said. But I'll never forget. And if you ever hurt Lily, if you ever do to her what you did to her mother, what you did to the others, I'll come back. With proof. With lawyers. With everything I learned from watching you. And I'll tear your empire down brick by brick. Thomas looked at me for a long time. Then he stood up. He held out his hand. Palm up, steady. The hand of a man who had never trembled. Deal, he said. I didn't shake it. I turned and walked out of the house. Out of the marriage. Out of the life I had almost let myself believe was real. The SUV was still in the driveway, but I didn't take it. I walked. Past the black sedan, past the empty space where the old truck had been, past the fireflies that flickered in the dark like warnings. I walked until I reached the highway. I stuck out my thumb. A truck stopped. An old Ford, rusted at the wheel wells, the kind of truck that should have been retired years ago. The driver was a woman, gray-haired, kind-eyed, who looked at me and saw something she recognized. "Need a ride?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Anywhere but here." She nodded, as if she understood. Maybe she did. I got in. The cab smelled like old coffee and something sweeter. Vanilla, maybe. Or the ghost of an air freshener that had given up years ago. There was a child's car seat in the back, empty, and a stuffed rabbit wedged between the cushions. "Name's Ruth," the woman said. "You look like you've had a night." "You could say that." "Man trouble?" "You could say that too." Ruth laughed. A rough, warm sound. She put the truck in gear, and we drove. The engine rattled. The wipers scraped. It had started to rain. A soft, steady rain that blurred the world into gray, and I sat in the passenger seat and I let myself breathe. "Where you headed?" Ruth asked. "I don't know," I said. And it was true. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew what I was leaving. The lies, the money, the man who had played the role of poor widower so perfectly that even he had forgotten who he really was. "Well," Ruth said, "I've got a spare room. Nothing fancy. Old stove, creaky stairs. But it's dry and it's quiet and nobody asks questions. You're welcome to it. Long as you need." I looked at her. At her kind eyes, her gray hair, her hand steady on the wheel. And I thought of my mother, who had held my hand while she died, who had told me to be strong, who had believed I would find my way. "Thank you," I said. "I'd like that." We drove through the rain, the old truck rattling and faithful, and I watched the town disappear in the rearview mirror. The dealership, the courthouse, the small house with its vanilla air freshener, the life I had almost had. And I thought of Lily, 7 years old, serious, calling me Elena, maybe Mom. I would see her again. I would find a way. Not as her mother. Thomas would never allow that. But as someone who loved her, who had held her hand through homework and hot chocolate spills, who had promised her a dog and meant it. I would be in her life. Quietly, carefully, the way Thomas had been quiet and careful, building his empire of lies. But I would build something different. Something true. The rain drummed on the roof. The wipers scraped across the windshield. And Ruth hummed something tuneless and old, a song her mother had sung, maybe, or a song she'd made up to fill the silence. I closed my eyes. I let myself rest. And for the first time in 3 days, in 3 months, in 3 years, I felt something I had forgotten existed. I felt free. The divorce was final in 6 weeks. Thomas's lawyers were efficient, discreet, expensive. I got enough money to rent an apartment, to buy a used car, to start over. Not enough to be comfortable, but enough to survive. Enough to be invisible. I saw Lily twice in the first year. Supervised visits, in public places, Thomas watching from a distance with his washed-out blue eyes and his perfect suit. She was quieter each time, more careful, her small shoulders carrying a weight that shouldn't have been hers. But she smiled when she saw me. She still called me Elena, maybe Mom, though she whispered it now, as if it were a secret. I never found proof of what Thomas did to Sarah, or to the others. The foundation in Riverside was inspected, declared sound, and built over. The women remained missing, their names fading from memory, their families either non-existent or paid to forget. Marcus retired to Florida, sent me a postcard once with no return address, and was never heard from again. Catherine Voss ran the companies now. I saw her picture in magazines sometimes, business profiles, philanthropy events, the polished face of legitimate wealth. She never married Thomas. She never married anyone. She had made her peace with the devil, and she was content to let him have his brides, his secrets, his concrete foundations. I moved to a different state. I changed my name. Not completely, not enough to erase Elena Marsh, but enough to be hard to find. I got a job at a library, the small brick kind that smelled like dust and old paper. I helped children find books. I watched them read, their faces lit with the wonder of stories that ended happily, of villains who were defeated, of princesses who saved themselves. And sometimes, late at night, I would take out the photograph I had of Lily, the one from our wedding, purple dress, rice in her hair, grinning at the camera with a gap-toothed smile, and I would whisper the same thing every time. I'm still here, Bug. I'm still here, and I'm coming back for you. I didn't know if it was true. I didn't know if I could ever keep that promise. But promises are like walls. They're not just for keeping people out. They're for giving you time to decide who you want to let in. And I had decided. I had let in the memory of a kind man in the rain, a man who had never existed. I had let in the grief of a daughter who called me mom. I had let in the anger, the fear, the diamond hardness that had formed under pressure. And I had let in hope. Small, fragile, stubborn hope. The hope that one day Lily would be old enough to choose. The hope that one day Thomas would make a mistake. The hope that one day the walls would come down, and I would be there, ready, waiting, with everything I had learned. Until then, I drove my used car. I lived in my small apartment. I worked at my library. And I watched. I listened. I planned. Because the best disguise is the one nobody questions, and I had learned from the best.